be their authentic self, like however they want to. I can say that I'm really impatient, but this is why I am, whatever it is. I wouldn't want, I don't know if I want to use psychological safety, but that could be at anywhere. It doesn't have to be at work, but to be able to say your truth without knowing that it's not going to be under scrutiny or judgment.
Welcome to Behind the Story, the show that explores the pivotal moments, lessons, and big visions of entrepreneurs, athletes, artists, leaders, and influencers redefining what's possible. I'm Jelani, your host and guide. Let's begin. Mazarine, good evening and welcome to Behind the Story. Thank you for being with me. Looking forward to our conversation and everything that you have to share with the audience. Before we get started and start talking about your work and all your art and everything, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience for the people who may not have heard of you or heard of your work.
Thanks for having me on, Jelani. In a nutshell, I'm the founder of the Art Brewery, and this is really the place where I use kind of visual language and creative processes as sort of tools, basically for leadership, for culture, and for human connection. And this is across corporate spaces and across education. And for me, it's about playing with the intersection between art, perception, and leadership. And I have never thought of any of these as separate worlds. So that's where my training as an artist kind of comes into play, because creativity has really been the spine of everything that I've done in my life. And it's also because of kind of a traditional artist, to be honest. I mean, I started with realism and all of that stuff. As I've moved into the space over the years, I don't see art really more as something that's either decorative or optional, but it's my way of training people through art about how we observe and how we interpret and how we respond using art.
Before we go into more of the discussion, and I'm sorry, this is probably going to throw you. People listening, they won't be able to see what I'm going to say, but people watching the video will see what I'm talking about. That painting behind you is drawing my attention. I need you to talk about that. Tell me about that work.
That's, of course, as you know, it's Bruce Lee.
Hmm.
And I'm actually sitting in my late husband's office. And, when we got into this whole COVID and everything was Zoom and the connectivity, we needed a huge piece that would cover the cupboards and stuff. So this was, of course, for me, a process of Pareidolia where I kind of had Bruce Lee, but I wanted a lot of other things coming out, whether it's through shapes, forms, and little pieces of texture and stuff. So that's
So
meant
that's your work. That's your work. Is that for sale?
no.
I'm a big Bruce Lee fan. I mean, I need some Bruce. Look at my walls; they're bare. I need Bruce Lee. I need something up on the wall. But no,
Bruce Lee
seriously,
and what's his name? Bob Marley were the two favorites. So they're both in this office.
it's a really striking photo. How do people encounter your work for the first time? What sort of expectations do you want them to feel or their takeaway?
So for me, I think work is about perception. And that's the reason I moved into this way of creating. And the style that I use is called Pareidolia. And I never knew that there was a word for it. But basically, it's when our brains try and make some sort of connection with actual things through ambiguous forms. So, for example, the only example I can really give you that everyone's experienced is, when you look at cloud formations and people see something and someone sees something completely different. My work is based on that. I like people to observe and to sit with it and figure out, I think I see this, but I'm not sure you put it there. So really that's the core concept of how I create my paintings.
Okay. What was some of the early experiences that you lived through that sort of shaped how you think about art and space and reflection and human connection?
I think, first of all, I've moved around a lot. So I'm from Bombay. And
Hmm.
then we spent a number of years as expats in the UAE, in Dubai. So that shaped how I looked at my art, because I really truly became a fine artist and really got into art as a career. in Dubai. Before that, I was in advertising. And then when I came here again, completely different lens. So I was born there. My kids were born in Toronto. They were educated in Dubai. And then I got into art in Dubai. When I came back here, it got into corporate and education. So I think all of this travel and seeing different people creating art in these different global places
Mm.
changed the way I looked at stuff. And I never really then enjoyed the realism that I really started my art practice with. I just felt the connection was just about, oh, she's a skilled artist. But there was nothing deeper than that. Like even with this, even though you can see it's Bruce Lee, if you actually kind of look at it, there would be a lot of other stuff coming out that just seems that looks like an animal or that looks like somebody else's face or there's something else happening in the sleeve. So I think my life as an expat moving around and then emigrating here to Canada just kind of opened up that there was much more to art than just the way I was creating initially. So yeah.
When did you realize that, I suppose, that art could function as something for really meaningful conversations?
So I say during COVID, I mean, I started this process way back in 2002 when I realized when I was still an expat in Dubai and I decided to do my first exhibition. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to start with a blank canvas. I'm not going to worry about what really transpires there. And then, of course, when you kind of let go of those limitations where an eye has to be on a certain part of the face, or I just went to town with just throwing colors and figuring out what was happening. And then fast forward to COVID, and I realized this whole boxed in situation that we were in, everyone, the distance, and we realized we're really social people. We had stories to tell, things that we were all going through in our own ways. And I started just exchanging these blots with family and friends and said, let's just see what comes up. And then that's when I started seeing the perceptions of the same situation that we were all in. Like there were mothers who loved the fact that they didn't have to drive the kids to school. And there were some who were just like, this is exhausting to have them.
Mhm.
So I started seeing, wow, we are in the same situation, the same problem, and all of us are seeing it so differently. Um, and our perceptions are so different. And it was really nice to kind of connect the dots and see how we are kind of operating really as a society. And that sort of triggered that I think this is a good way to kind of open up the sphere in corporate and see, because I think in leadership too, I don't believe that leadership is really kind of a title as such, but it's how you lead, how you pause. Do you listen? Are you kind of aware that there are, quieter voices in the room? Have you paused to kind of understand that perhaps there is something I missed if I didn't really stop and listen? So I think that's where it kind of sort of grew through COVID.
Okay. Walk me through the philosophy behind the Art Brewery.
Ooh. Well, I could never sit still. So I always had to do something that I wanted to expand the creative spine. Like I said, I've had my careers in advertising and in a corporate field where I was with CG Ontario working on their marketing. I was even doing visual merchandising at the Bay. And everything, the core of it was all the connections and seeing creativity in different spheres. And that was really the spine, because for me, I felt when people look at creativity and they use that word, I think people just think of it as, I think it's drawing or painting or writing or pottery. But I think creativity to me, and I feel we're all creative humans, is really about how do you focus? Because when you're doodling or when you're doing something, your focus is enhanced. It brings down your cortisol level. So it could be anything. I wanted to train people on is I can't teach them creativity. I think we are all creative, but I can train people to understand perception and how to do that. So the art brewery really was just the philosophy of using creativity as a tool in education, in life generally. Yeah, that was basically the basis of it all.
Did you Your own, or did you start it with your late husband?
Oh, we started together. Yeah.
How was that for you dealing with the loss and continuing with the project? Did you use the art as therapy or to get through it? Like, how did you integrate it and continue forward?
It was hard because, when things like this happen suddenly, you're unprepared. But I think that's the other thing. That's the other thing that really talk about when we have our leadership workshops, that understanding who you are. Because I think when we keep saying, look at your teams and look at the people that you're dealing with and you're leading, we fail to understand what our own biases are and how do we operate and what's our trajectory. So I think I knew for a fact that I always had the strength to move on in a sense. And this has always been a part of my life. And because we started it together, I think for me, this was a purpose. I had this as a purpose. And it was always something that we dreamt of together. We did a lot of the workshops together initially. So it was hard, but I think because the ball had started rolling, it was sort of, I had to keep going. Sometimes you just do it out of rote. So yes. And I think because for me, having different perspectives was important. Bringing other coaches into the fray, having these conversations, it just made it easier because then I was subtly building this community of people who had the same values, who understood the mission of what we stood for. So I guess these little things kind of help you move forward.
Give me an example of how a workshop goes with a company. How does it help them? How do they work through it? Give me an example of what an art brewery workshop looks like.
So we have done workshops which were team building workshops. And that really was all about, again, we use Pareidolia and we use a blot. We kind of use that really as a springboard to understanding perspectives because the foundation we lay is we've all experienced pareidolia in our lives. We've all either seen a smiley face in our coffee foam, or, like I said, cloud formations, or people have seen faces in tree barks or things like that. So we use the blots almost as a way of creating and seeing perspectives. So that's what we start off with to kind of lay the groundwork that this is one problem and look at the amount of people that have seen something different in that same plot. So that look at it as a challenge. What is something that's missing in your teams? Do you find that they're not connecting, etc.? And then you move on and then, they would create on their own, or then we create in groups. The storytelling and the sharing is amazing because that team building workshop is really about getting to know each other beyond the context of work. And especially when they have the storytelling, then I think you reduce conflict because the next time there is a situation and this person, a team member, comes up with a solution, you're like, yeah, I know that's how he sees it, or that's where he was raised, or that was his background. And then you can connect the dots and realize that, yeah, I can see where he's coming from. What we have now created is a series of leadership workshops because what we found out that for corporate culture to change, and especially in this divisive world, I mean, what we realized that after COVID, hybrid and, remote work is kind of there to stay in most cases. However, we've seen that there is a big gap now because I think what has been missing, the connectivity has become amazing. Ever since COVID, I mean, look at us. You're in the UK, time difference is 5 hours, but we can connect quite easily. However, what we found out in the last couple of years is that the actual human connectivity is missing. So
Mhm.
we developed a series of a three-part workshop series for leaders to really understand what building or rebuilding trust means. Those water cooler conversations where I know this person has my back. The teams aren't connecting, the loyalty is gone, but it's costing companies a lot of money because, you know, you get a promotion somewhere, you move on because you really don't know your teams that well. You really aren't connecting from that. And we still all believe that any work is still deeply human. I mean, that connectivity is what we're working on. So our workshops, the first one, again, we build on perspectives. So again, we use this creative pareidolia way of kind of springboarding off it. And then we start working into spotting your biases. We start working into what are your habit loops. And then we move to workshop 2. So we build that bridge to workshop 2, that now that we've understood what perspectives are, how important they are, how do we create that into a habit? And then the last workshop is about building trust. So, how do you check in and walk away? How do you kind of have those check ins which are non transactional? So each workshop is about 4 hours, and it's like the activities are all about bringing the leaders in and really being the observer, being the leader, being the team member, and it's all of that. Yeah.
I know what you mean about the human connection in
Mhm.
workshops because I work remotely, and a few years ago, I worked for a company, and we came on site once a quarter, and I remember looking forward to the day. And I'm naturally an introvert, so I like being alone. I like working alone, because I'm just an introverted person. But I really looked forward to the time when we would all be meeting on site and we planned activities together. We didn't call it workshops, but we had something where we scheduled our monthly HR meeting at that time. And we had a theme, and we were all partake in the different things. And I worked with a brilliant bunch of people to where the energy was just different. We saw each other, twice, 3 times a week on video calls, but it was not the same when we met in person and really interacted with each other and went to lunch together and so forth. So I know exactly what you mean as far as that actual in-person human connection. But I will admit I got more work done when when I wasn't in the office because I could just sit there, focus, and not be distracted. And someone popping by your office and asking a question that they would normally send a text on Teams on, and you could just answer and keep working. So I do kind of say working remotely or hybrid is beneficial as far as getting things done. I will say that. In regards to the workshops, though, let me ask you about leaders and organizations. What do you think, or what have you seen that they misunderstand about creativity and how it impacts, the work environment? And what shifts have you seen when they truly engage with the creative process as it applies to their work environment?
I think because what I made a note here because, like I said, it's grounded in Pareidolia. So that's a really great way, because we've all experienced, that's a really great way to, first of all, set the tone to understand that perspectives matter. And then you kind of tangibly show it to them in a practical sense. I think what the takeaway, or what I feel that they get, is we don't in our workshops impose any meaning. We invite them in. So I think the whole premise is getting them. So when we lead these workshops, it's not about telling them exactly. We are facilitating them to see it a certain way. So we are just guiding them to really open up what's missing. And like I said, it's not about imposing certain facts, because what I'm trying to say is that it's not just central to what we do, but it's really the leadership philosophy. Is like, have you paused? Have you really taken a breath? And have you really listened? Because I think the one thing we found out is time is of essence, and everybody's like, oh, but there is a deadline. And the other thing we've noticed is that leaders feel that they need to wear a different hat at work and a different hat at home. And I don't think that's needed. I mean, that's the other thing where we say, have you paused? Because that's the reason the very first workshop is spotting your biases. How do you conflict? Like, some leaders are like, that's the that's the confident voice because it's louder. They speak up. But doesn't mean that the solution is necessarily a fit for that problem. So, and sometimes you need to go back to the drawing board, which wastes more time than actually sitting down, taking a pause and saying, okay, what have we missed? So this is all about adding depth, because even when we do the workshops, I think what we believe is that most decisions that happen or are made, they don't tend to fail because of lack of data, but because every perspective or the perception all of it was never examined. So I think what we want the leaders is to be more aware. We want them to be really more present and not be literally pausing before reacting. So I think that's the takeaway, or that's the basis of what we sort of tell them. And we don't need the scale, because I think with technology, the scale will happen, but we want to leave the integrity and the depth of the program to be valid. So I don't know if that answers the question.
No, it answers the question. And as you were speaking, a thought ran through my head when you were talking about leaders being different at home as they are in the office. And I remember I learned something about that to where now I'm the same all the time. I read it in a book where the author was talking about couples who were having problems in their marriages. And he said, if you have a job, he said, think of it this way. If you have a job and you have a customer, think about how you talk to the best customer of the company, the respect that you give that person, the accommodations you provide to that person, the courtesy. You never raise your voice to that customer because your company depends on that customer and everything. And he said, isn't your wife worth more to you than that customer?
Hmm.
Or your husband? Why would you talk to your wife or your husband less than how you talk to the company's best customer? He said, when you think of it that way, the same way you talk to that supposedly golden customer should be the exact same way you interact with your partner, because then you'd never raise your voice because you're not ever going to yell at a customer. You're going to make sure you're patient. You're going to make sure you're calm. You're going to make sure you dial it down and try to work with the situation. So that's how you should be dealing with your partner. It's really hard to do because when emotions are involved with your partner, sometimes you've got that passion and that fire.
Yeah.
um, but for me, when I've thought about it, I've not had to be a different person at home than at work. I'm just me because the same way I'm speaking to senior people or my colleagues is the same way I'm speaking to my partner. The same
Hmm.
calmness, patience, respect. So I do understand what you mean when you talked about leaders having to be differently. Let me ask you this about you personally. And if it's too personal, you don't have
No,
to.
no, go ahead.
In regards to, losing your husband and the grief, how did dealing with that grief reshape your relationship with the art brewery and with the concept that you both founded together?
I think it strengthened it a little bit more than it was before. And it's a strange thing to say. But again, like when we talked about relationships and you said, oh, this is how you'd speak, we would have our debates because my husband he was really good at marketing. He's had over 40 years of experience in advertising and taught the courses. So we would have these debates and he would go, but I do this for a living. I know what I'm saying. I'm like, yes, but I'm looking at it from the art point of view. So to answer your question, now that it's me, my entire lens is creative. And I think sometimes navigating that has become a bit easier because whilst he gave it a lot of bones and, the muscle, and it really kind of made it three-dimensional, the core of it was still how it developed from how I was painting in the last 2 decades. So I think it strengthened my clarity on how I want things to be because I'm leading it from one place now.
Right.
And
Do you ever
whilst
hear his voice?
I do. And sometimes, like, I am sure this would not be sitting well with you, but I am just going to test this out nevertheless.
How did that evolution feel as you were going through it?
Strange at times, but when you've been sort of an artist all your life in both ways, creativity, like just building different, verticals with everything that you enjoy in terms of art. It was odd and not odd. I don't know how to explain that feeling, but it was like you, I did second guess myself because there are a lot of nuts and bolts involved. I'm like, okay, yes, I can see this. I know how. But growth is not just, okay, it's a creative way of looking at it, but there is so many more little nuances that need to be sort of filled in, which at times I have to step back. I'm like, I don't think this is the way it should have been done. So, yes, there are lots of dips where I feel it might just go off the rails, but I'm getting there
Okay. Did he ever contribute to the creative process?
a lot.
What was those conversations like?
Went into many debates. And then we never had the solution on that day because we both be going at a tangent. He had a very creative brain, but his creativity was also about there is a process to things. Whereas for me, I would like to read the room. I mean, I've made all these notes, but I'm still waffling and going off tangent, which is
Mhm.
fine. But
Yeah.
he would have been completely like, we have to finish these ways. This has to be done in that order. I'm like, yes, but we don't know what the room would be like. I don't know who those leaders would be. Some may be chatty, some may have an ego, and some may not want to speak. How do you draw that out? Yes, but I'm like, okay, this is not a classroom. So we had those debates, but he did have a very creative lens. He could think outside the box. But yeah, I mean, we never got a solution on that day. It was always like the huff and puff, and you walk up and like, okay, we have to come to a kind of middle ground.
So, as you're going through these workshops and training these executives, what do you believe are some of the essential things for someone like yourself that's facilitating these kinds of conversations?
You mean with the facilitation or
Yeah.
with the. So I think to just break that mold, because when you're at that leadership place, you do hear, I never got there just overnight. I've done the due diligence. We've gone through we've gone through the hurdles. People are always changing. So it's always, teams will change, my department would change, but I have to stick to who I am.
Mhm.
But that can still change. You can still be pliable. And I find that sometimes that becomes a bit of a hurdle. Like that can become a bit of a challenge where they feel, but how it's kind of waffly. How does creativity? It seems too abstract for some people. And they don't feel that there is any sort of depth in this sort of a feeling, whereas I don't feel that way. So try and break that mindset to say, this is a tangible process that needs to be going. You need to go through this process. You need to actually understand the activities and what these workshops hold, that it's possible to bring in that creative way of looking at how you lead the teams or how do you set your corporate culture. So yeah, sometimes it feels like a challenge, like it's an uphill battle, and that's what you kind of hear most of the time. Like for example, I had somebody saying that, watching the leadership shift when they're actually listening was a big triumph. But the challenge is it's making sure that creativity belongs in corporate places more than they imagine it to be. It's not just doodling and having this little artistic little activity. That's not it. So that has been a major challenge. They just find it's just way too abstract and we don't get anything out of it now as they listen and that's the reason it's a 3-part workshop and we have a 2-week gap between, because we want this accountability. We want to see, okay, what is that one shift you made? What was that one habit you changed? What was the cue that kind of made a difference? Did you pause or did you ask another opinion before shooting off an email? What was that habit, that one habit that you changed? So yeah, so those are some of the things that we're still working through. Yeah.
How do you ensure the integrity of the work and the workshop while allowing the participants to bring their own voice?
Yeah. We do. And that's the reason all the activities are done in triads. So even when we ask what's the challenge, you don't have to really name a challenge. Some challenges could be the departments aren't talking, or some challenges could be I can't find a lot of the team members who don't seem to speak up. So that's the part where we have a short game where we talk about let's pass the perspective. Let's see that from the lens of a peer, from another department head, from a customer, from a junior executive. So the same challenge is passed, but what we do is we have them actually play all the roles. So they are observing. And also things like when you're having conversations with your team, what are the kind of questions you ask? Because sometimes you have these close ended questions. Why wasn't that done? I'm like, okay, what are you? Because I don't know. I just didn't understand. I don't know. What is that? The answer you expect when your body language and it's like, but how about something like it seems, would you need more support with this? Like, so we ask them to frame their own questions and we have them observe themselves. So they are playing the observer and the team member um, and the leader, which gives them the same capability to use their voice. So we don't have our coaches really speak as much as we let them identify what they've observed and where that change could be.
How do you make the environment safe in the workshops when the topics can be complex or emotionally charged? Like how do you maintain psychological safety, I would say, in the environment?
So first we kind of find out, we ask them, we put that word up to say, what really does psychological safety mean to you? And again, like I said, the very first one where we talk about perspectives, we lay the groundwork to say there is no right or wrong, which is why working off those blots is a really cool way to know that you can put an eye somewhere. It's what you see and how you identify. And when they share their stories, to let them know that there is no right or wrong, what you see. And if you can say, this is what I saw, and if you can actually kind of point it out or define it, you can't really debate that, yeah, oh, yeah, I do see that frog now. I missed that in my blot, but now I see it because you showed it to me. So we kind of lay that as the first groundwork. But then we do talk about psychological safety and we ask the participants, what does that mean to you? And most of them, it's not about bubble wrapping, but it's about being able to speak up, even if they feel they don't have all the information, to kind of speak up, even if they feel they could be wrong. It's to allow them to be themselves in however they navigate their role in that company. But again, like I said, we leave it up to them. So we just guide the conversations and they themselves are observing. So it's not about we do the activities in a way where they themselves are reading the room like, yeah, that just didn't feel right. Like for an example, we said, okay, what is an actual non-transactional check-in feel? Have you thought of just listening when somebody wants to talk? You don't need to always be like rush into, solve the problem. Sometimes they just need somebody to talk to. So we play these little games and then we ask them, how did it feel when you could just speak? And were you surprised when that person did not have something to say back? But yeah, that actually felt, and then we kind of grab the feeling words or we say, okay, that felt a little weird. It was just not like, it was weird. I expected this person to say something, but we don't, there is nothing about like, "Oh, now you see that happen. So we don't do that. We just, we just grab everything that they're saying and we put it and these are your words. So this is just something you need to sit with and something you need to think about when you are actually in a situation at the office. So we don't give them an answer because there is no answer. There is no right or wrong to this. This is all about observing, all about really understanding your leadership style. And what we also lay out is we aren't telling you that you're doing anything wrong. We are just deepening your leadership values and the leadership skills, especially in this changing world, because I mean, AI has taken over. It's distracting. It's chaotic. Nobody seems to be thinking. People are using Chat GPT for everything under the sun. So, okay, where am I going to now talk to another human and really have that person listen? And that to me, because with everything that I've gone through, the community and who I have around has been far more superior. You know, having another human to talk to and exchange ideas and know that they have your back. That feeling you would never get from anything else. So that's what we want to lay down, that community and really listening and having that empathy is just that is the only thing I think, whether it's business or home or personal relationships, is what will continue to just, I think, hold you together.
Mazarine, looking ahead, is there any particular type of art that's calling to you for you to express creatively?
So I have actually started a new collection with the butterfly, but again, it's just symbolic and it's called Echoes of Flight. I don't want to talk about metamorphosis or anything of that, but I'm just using almost that as that fleeting flight, but it just brings so much to it. So I'm that's something that I've been thinking about a lot as part of my work on canvas. And I am a Parsi, a Zoroastrian. I don't know if you've heard of. So there are less than 50,000 of us left in the world now. And you can't convert to you're born a Parsi. And we have this muslin undergarment which we wear when you're initiated into the faith, and there is a little stitched thing which is called the pocket of good deeds. So it's good thoughts, good words, good deeds, and you're supposed to practice that every day. The art that is now calling to me is more conversational art, where I almost have what is the universal truth mean to you? What is a good deed mean to you? Like thou shan't, hate your neighbor or whatever. But what about, if the neighbor's a terrorist, or, if somebody's killed, or an abusive husband? Are you still going to love that person because that's your neighbor? Now, again, there's no right or wrong. It's perception. So my thing is to have these conversations on, like, you don't kill, like killing is bad. But then I have swatted a cockroach, but I would not kill a rabbit. Like, okay, is that why am I killing a cockroach that's still killing? But because they're icky, I just don't like cockroaches. But I would not kill anything else because why? Because it's pretty. It's the cockroach is not bite. So do you know what I'm saying? So that's calling
What
to
you
me.
say?
Because I think this good thoughts, good words, good deeds, which is the basis of my faith, how does that relate to when it's a universal truth for all? Like what does that imply? And again, I just want to have a conversation. There is no like, oh, you killed a cockroach, or this is not, it's not. Like what is a universal truth to you? So I think that's the one that's calling, because it all ties into, again, perception and, how we look at the world and how we navigate our lives and all of that.
In regards to loving your neighbor, my mom and dad used to say, you can love the person, hate their deeds.
Hmm.
So you could still love the abusive husband and hate the abuse.
Yes.
Separate him. That's all my mom and dad used to say you differentiate. What would you hope? I mean, we've had this conversation now, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I wonder, what would you hope would be my takeaway or somebody's takeaway after engaging with your work, engaging with you, engaging in one of your workshops or conversation? If you had to paint that brush, what would that canvas look like?
My goodness, I'm not sure about that. I guess, again, it would really be such an ambiguous, abstract thing that I would really love people to just see what they see out of it. Because I think the one thing is, like I said, even this conversation with about the good thoughts, good words, it's like how you see will always determine how you lead, and how whatever your lens is, it's that's like, just be aware of how you're perceiving things, and then just see where that goes, because I don't think there is one way of doing it. And I think whether it's leaders, whether and I think even me, I would call myself a leader because I am leading my life a certain way. I'm holding whatever, the business, my art, whatever it is. So, and how do I choose to go through that? So
So let me ask it this way and change it up. Say, not what you would want them to take away from it, but how would you want them to feel, regardless of their perception? What feeling would you want them to have after engaging with your work, if anything?
I think safe to be who they are. I would like them to be comfortable in whatever it is that they want people to know who they are. Be their authentic self, like however they want to. I can say that I'm really impatient, but this is why I am. Whatever it is, I wouldn't want. I don't know if I want to use psychological safety, but that could be at anywhere. It doesn't have to be at work, but to be able to say your truth without knowing that it's not going to be under scrutiny or judgment. Like sometimes we sort of sugarcoat what we really want to say, or, for example, art. Like we used to go to a lot of these art shows, and I would literally look at some fantastic known names, and I would go, how is this person famous? This is just read. It's just, I've read about it. I mean, Rothko and all of that. Like, I've read about all of that. I see that. I'm like, I, why am I spending? I could just put it on. I can just put the colors, but it's okay. I don't mind saying that. And I've had people staring. Like, do you know that's a rock? Yes, I do, but it doesn't connect with me, and I should be able to say that.
Yes, I agree.
So I think that's what I would like people to feel, that I would like to say that, and they can see, I see your point of view. I see why you, yeah, I guess I see it that way too. I mean, I don't want to agree, but I see why you feel that way. I think that's what I want. I want people to be comfortable in saying what they feel. Of course, not being rude and putting people down. That's a whole different section, but
Mhm.
you know what I mean. I mean, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, when I look at art, I look at it in the context of where I want it. So, and what the energy is I get from it. So, using this brilliant piece that you've got behind you as an example, if I'm looking at that, I know exactly where in my home I would put it
Hmm.
because it doesn't fit everywhere. So, when I look at the art, whatever it is, whether it just be splashes on a canvas or a landscape or whatever, I'm looking at it thinking, yeah, I don't like it because I can't think of any place in my home it would go. Oh, I don't like it because I can't think of any place in the garage I would put it or whatever. So when I look at art, I'm looking at it from the context of my life and how it's making me feel. And I don't think anything is wrong with that. But
I
again, I guess I'm
understand.
not an art snob.
Exactly. And that's totally fine. Like there are people who've come and said, but this doesn't match my couch. I'm like, okay, I'm not doing it for the couch, but I get it. You may not want to spend that kind of money, and you want your art because you want it to be an interior design piece.
Right. Nothing
Am I
wrong with that.
offended? No, it's fine. It doesn't fit there. The price point is, it's all good. But there are some people who would be, do you know this one had it in my gallery and it's not to match your couch. You change your, I'm like, but that's how
No.
this thing. So this is what I mean. This is what I mean. So I want people to be comfortable to speak their mind. I mean, not be rude and put somebody down, but speak your mind, and that's okay. And to say that, I have to give you this really awful example. We were just leaving Dubai. We were expats there, and this was the last show, and we had it, and it was a group show with some of the artists that were represented by this. Person who also represented me. She was an art curator. And my husband was standing in front of one of my pieces, and another couple who's always come to these art shows. They just put up any crap there now. And my husband goes, well, that's my wife's work. Oh, and they were trying to, he said, that's okay. You don't have to like it. I, so anyway, long story short, I was like, okay, that's fine. You didn't like it. It's all good. And then I was back in Toronto, and I uh, put this up for, it was what do you call, not curated, it was curated, but it was going to, they were going to be selecting certain works for a show. This got selected and it won first prize in a category of 600 entries, and there you go. I'm like, this is it, this is perception. Somebody
Exactly.
kid, and I wasn't going to get into a tis, but it was really awkward for my poor husband. Was like, that's my wife's, and
Yeah.
that's put up on the wall, but yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to creative things, it's all subjective. One
Yeah,
person could look at it and think it's brilliant. Another person could look at it and think, what is that? It's subjective and they're both
totally.
right because it's the interpretation of it, right? And hopefully the artist does not take it personal. So
Exactly.
that's the
People think
important
like,
part.
"Oh dear, should I have signed this piece?" But I'm like, "That's okay."
It's okay. Well, Mazarine, any final words before we go?
Not really, not
Well,
really. But it was lovely having a chat with you. I know I was just all over the place, a lot of waffling, but it was lovely chatting with you.
no, that's okay. You answered the questions and I'm really happy that you were forthcoming and happy with everything you shared. So thank you so much for being on BTS and best of luck to you.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Behind the story.